okay, sir, you can go and you can go on, and I'm a listener today.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Okay.
Fair enough.
Thank you, sir. Okay.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Hey, Anita.
Hello, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Well, what do you expect? I wonder if we'll have any newcomers today.
Well, hopefully, there are days when we just have 2 persons or sometimes just 1 person. So, fingers crossed.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, it's a good, in some respects, maybe it makes for a good study hall. Sort of like while we're sitting here waiting, we can knock out a few other items.
All right.
Actually, since you're here and we don't always get, you and I don't get that much time to catch up, there, it might be worth, well, especially as like She Code Africa comes around, like pretty soon. By the way, are you guys having a call later today on that?
Concerning She Code Africa?
Yeah.
No, I wasn't told of any call.
Okay.
I don't think there is.
Oh, okay. Then I probably have the days confused. Let me double check.
Yeah.
Today's the nope. Yep, it's today.
It's today?
Well, yeah, I think. Let me message Anita.
Okay, can you just drop the link here? So.
Yeah.
You must have missed it.
Sure. I don't know that Ruth. I don't think she put it on the calendar. I should. But I just messaged you in Slack. She had created I think a small direct message with like a few of the mentors. So with you.
All right.
And so. Okay, cool. Hey, Jubril.
Hi.
Jubril, help me out with your last name.
It's
O something.
Y.
Oh, O-Y. L.
Tunji.
Nice. Did I get it?
Yes.
Correct. Okay. Oh boy. Give me an enunciation of it if you would.
It's Oyetunji.
Oyetunji. All right.
Yes.
Exactly. And is it Jubril or is it enunciated differently?
It's Jubril.
Jubril. Okay. Nice. Oyetunji. Nice. Oh man, your last name's so much easier than it looks. Oyetunji. I gotta say, Anita, every time that I see your last name, I can't help but think of like all of the Apple products. I'm sorry. I think of you as this splendid robotic woman with like an Apple logo on your.
Oh, thank you. That sounds more like a compliment.
Yeah. You're the first humanoid that I know. You're the first iHuman.
Okay, so while we're here, it seems some binaries are not compatible with Alpine. Isn't Go supposed to be cross-platform?
Yeah, that's There is, oh, okay. So just for context for Anita and for Asuko, one of the things that Jubril was looking at recently is that, you know, when someone downloads Meshery, by default, they'll get quite a few containers. And that's because there's a lot of adapters. And we've made it so that users can opt out of downloading all the adapters if they don't want them all. But by default, they get quite a few. And even if they only got one, you always want to try to slim down your adapter, like make it as small as possible so that it, you know, you can quickly get the software and start using it. And so Jubril was one of the ways to do that is by taking the base image, the operating system that you choose to use as the container image. We've been recently, or I don't know how recently, but for a while we've been using Ubuntu, and that's pretty heavy. That's pretty big. We've been using it because, well, because outside of the Golang that Meshery is written in, so Meshery server gets compiled, is Go. It is written in Go and it gets compiled. The included in that same image is Meshery's UI, which is React, and it doesn't get compiled, so it doesn't really place any requirements on the operating system. Golang, to Jubril's point, as long as you don't do silly things in your code or do architecture specific things in your code, you can compile that Golang to different operating systems, different Linux flavors or Windows or other, and different, not just operating systems, but also architectures, like different CPU architectures. So, okay, good. So why are we using Ubuntu, this big heavy image, for Meshery? Like, it just takes people longer to download. You know? Well, there's a couple of other components that get dropped into place in the same Meshery image. So we said the UI, the Meshery server, and then there's at least, and the only two that come to mind, they're both load generators. So when Meshery wants to do performance management, one of the ways it does performance management is generates a lot of HTTP requests or TCP or Jubril. Actually, this could be an area of interest for you potentially. Today, when Meshery is doing those performance tests, it only generates HTTP traffic. It will do, you can give it specific HTTP headers to help mimic different types of requests. But if you wanted to do TCP or just straight up TCP, or gRPC or UDP even, it's not possible with the current load generators. And so that's actually an outstanding like feature request for the load generators. Vishal is with us. That's fantastic. Vishal, this might be.
That sounds quite fun. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the nice thing about something like supporting TCP or gRPC is that it's meaningful to the project. Like, it's significant enough that like it's a line item on a release. Like, oh, now supporting this thing, and there's some learning and things to do in there. It's differentiating for the project because none of them, or most of the other projects in this space, they won't go that deep, as deep as Meshery would in terms of giving you all those options. And the other reason why it's interesting is because, or kind of a nice project, is because, well, it's like there's a lot of prior art in the code base for how to support that type of a thing. So it's not like having to bring in a whole new architectural component. Rather you're augmenting what's there. So it's actually achievable. Like, it's not super hard. It's moderate. But so Vishal, one of the things that Jubril is looking at is reducing the size of the Docker images for Meshry. And there's two binaries that outside of Meshry server, there's two other binaries that we put on there. So in the same image, one of them is WRK2. It's written in C++ or C. I think it's C++, but it could be C. And I've seen just a quick Google search this morning. Like, first of all, I thought that we had WRK2 running on Alpine with Meshry a while ago, but I could be misremembering. But if you do a quick Google search for WRK2, that's one of the load generators on Alpine, you'll find a number of public repos, Docker Hub repos that have WRK2 on Alpine. So, okay, so there's some configuration in which that works. Okay, so then I think there's just one hiccup left, like, and that's there are two other generators, load generators that Meshry supports. One of them is Fortio. Maybe we should be writing some of this down. Actually, you know what? It's in the docs. One of them is it's by a Frenchman, and I was giving a talk. I've given talks on the load generating capabilities of Meshry a few different times, but one of the times he was attending it, so I think it was DockerCon, and he corrected me on stage. It's not Fortio, it's Fortio. It is a very French way of saying the word, those letters. So Fortio. Anyway, I've been practicing because you get shamed on stage once, like you. He's a nice guy. He was, I mean, it's his project, and so I'm sure he's like, I'm sure it like rubs on his ear nubs whenever. I think he even has it. Well, I guess so. It looks like a Greek word, and this one, Fortio, and part of the reason we got started with Fortio was to. Oh, hey, ooh, check that out.
Nice.
Oh yeah, it is Greek, Fortio, which means load burden, right? Because I guess Meshry isn't worth its salt, because otherwise it would have been named a Greek. It would have come after a Greek word, but everything. So I digress. The point is, this is written in Go, and so Meshry incorporates Fortio as a library, and compiles that Go down to the right. Compiles that down, and so it runs on the image that we desire for it to run on. Okay, so then the last load generator, the third one, is Nighthawk. So we talk about Fortio, we embed this as Golang, this is C++. I think we've been able to get that compiled down correctly. Nighthawk, it is written in C++, and compiling it is enough of a headache, and I think that's an accurate and fair statement, is that we've created an entire project to address it. Actually, we'll be talking about the project and it's yet to be really announced and released. The website itself is just still in flight, and a lot of the work is still in flight. This particular project, so this actually is good. This next part that we're about to talk about, it actually fulfills the Newcomers agenda. Like, hey, what is this project? Get Nighthawk. It's just getting started. There's a description of it here. When we started this project, I decided to try to get it going much more in context of the CNCF than anywhere else. And so there's a CNCF service mesh working group meeting later today in 4 hours, or 4 hours and 40 minutes. It's at 1 o'clock Central here. So 4 hours and 40 minutes from now. And We use that meeting time to talk about Get Nighthawk. We also talk about service mesh performance. We do a number of things in there, but yeah. But part of the point of this project is to take the load generator called Nighthawk, which is, it's a load generator that was created as part of the Envoy proxy project. And in order to, and so Envoy is written in C++. Nighthawk is also then written in C++, just like Istio control plane is written in Go and Fortio is written in Go. Like the projects are very related. They kind of written in the same languages. Nighthawk is, Nighthawk's pretty interesting. A much more capable load generator. We have a number of plans for it. Hence, between those evil plans that we have and the challenge of like getting it built and trying to get it incorporated, like more tightly integrated into Meshry, we decided to create this project. The Nighthawk itself as a project, like super nerdy and interesting, but like this is the site, this is the project page. Like there isn't a project page. So since we were going to have to be doing a lot of builds and integrating with Meshry, we figured, heck, shoot, let's just let everybody else benefit as well and help uplift the project by giving it, making the builds that we're going to be doing available to everyone. Like once we start having to build the project, maybe putting it out into different formats wouldn't be too hard. And by formats, I mean things like this, like create a few different distributions of Nighthawk, so that maybe we're creating a container image or a couple of them. Maybe we're creating packaging in some popular package managers to help install the thing. We'll certainly be using, if you run Meshry CTL perf, or if you do the Meshry performance management stuff, Nighthawk is one of those choices. Here we go. We wanted to get stable builds going on these OSs. So, long story short, Nighthawk is the reason, I think the last standing reason for the Ubuntu-based Meshry server image. Oops. So with that, Jubril, that's probably your the last standing hurdle. The thing is it's a great like proposal that you've made to reduce the image size. And there's a whole project dedicated to trying to create different builds of Nighthawk. So maybe in context of this project, there's a Nighthawk build that we can get to that would run on an Alpine image. Avishek Kumar is the one that's been that's of the Layer5 community directly. He's been the most successful with getting GitHub actions, GitHub workflows going for these builds. So under GitHub, under Layer5.io, get Nighthawk. This is the repo for the project. So both the website, the Jekyll-based website, is here, and it's in need of some love. I mean, you can tell from looking at it. But then the workflows that actually build, so there's kind of two other parts to get Nighthawk. So one is what we were talking about, just workflows, like how do you build this thing, and how do we build it for Debian or Ubuntu or RHEL or Fedora or whatever, whatever any of those things are, I have to say, like, for the most part, I'm very keenly interested on getting a Nighthawk build that's works best for Meshry and focusing there and getting that done first. And then however other many distribution formats the community can put out, great. The third component to this effort, so there's a website, there's the building of the project of Nighthawk to various architectures. And the third one is, well, the integration into Meshry. So at the end of the day, Nighthawk is still written in C++, and bridging between Golang and C++, different ways to go about this. Well, I think initially the direction that we took was to wrap Golang around Nighthawk, making system level calls, like basically, you're using Nighthawk the binary like you would on the command line, which is fragile and it's not a. It's
Yeah, it's not perfect.
Yeah. But Nighthawk itself, it actually has a, so I have to go back and review, but we're using gRPC now between Meshry and Nighthawk. So we're using gRPC to communicate. I have to go back and review whether or not the gRPC sitting in front of Nighthawk is Nighthawk's gRPC service. I believe that it is, which means that the calls that you're making, those remote procedure calls, they're being executed directly by Nighthawk's C++ code. I believe that that's the case. At one point, though, we had a Go wrapper around it. And so I think this repo still has some of that Go code that would wrap around it. But I believe that that's been changing recently so that we're doing something much, much better by using gRPC. So if it's a project of interest to you, you're welcome to come to the CNCF Service Mesh Working Group call later today. Of the agenda, which actually I need to go. One of the things that will happen today is that one, we're going to talk about Meshry and Service Mesh performance because they're both being donated to the CNCF. The other thing that's going to happen is we'll get a presentation of, last time we got a presentation from Red Hat and Rancher on Submariner. Oh, Linkerd is up for graduation. Damn it. I gotta go approve the, yeah. All right, so we'll do Linkerd graduation today. We'll get a presentation from K8GB. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of this K8GB. It's not like the world needs another one of these, but it's a project that's a Kubernetes global load balancer. It was just accepted in as a sandbox project 2 days ago, which
so yet another load balancer.
Yeah, exactly. No, seriously, there's actually, it was accepted alongside another project that's literally called yet another, I don't know, which to me is like fucking nice. I want to smack somebody. This is stupid. It took 6 months for Ambassador to get through the proxy that, the microservices proxy that wraps Envoy. We already have. Yeah, we already have the one from Heptio. What is it? I forget the ingress controller that wraps Envoy. It starts with a C. Contour. I don't know, it just seems stupid. The project, like, it's frustrating. It's frustrating because to me, it dilutes the value of the sandbox. Also, yeah, anyway, we'll have a few topics, but one of the topics will be an update on Get Nighthawk. So a good place to let the CNCF rub off on you a bit, I guess. You'll have to listen to me again, unfortunately.
It's not a problem. Okay, so another question, like what's the difference between CNCF incubating graduated and the other ones?
Yeah, sandbox. Yeah, great question. Well, that changed recently. By the way, yeah, okay. Yeah, that changed recently. So there's three levels of project maturity within the CNCF. So it used to be that there was one, and then started to set these levels of graduation, these levels of maturity, so that primarily for kind of a couple of purposes. Like one purpose is to indicate to the world, to let the world know that certain projects are considered very mature, like very production ready or mature, or like at various stages in their life cycle, very boring maybe, or still volatile. The other reason why the levels were created is to apportion the spotlight. Like, so there's only at KubeCon last time, we ended up giving 4 talks. I think we turned down the 5th because just couldn't do another one. And but generally that never happens. Like we're so involved there that like we end up speaking on a lot of stuff. But for most, it's really hard to get a talk, and most people usually don't. And my point is there's only so many slots, and the more projects that there are, the more contention there is over the spotlight, over the marketing spotlight. And so the other reason for the levels of maturity is to apportion how much of that time slice or how many resources are afforded to them. And so, yep. So it was about 6 months ago. And I'll say that I disagree with this decision and was vocal about it. Of one of the few times that I've kind of disagreed with the direction of some of the things that we've done. It was to take Sandbox and dramatically change its entry level requirements to like almost nothing. But yeah, so it's changed, and I'll describe it as it is today, which is, well, the two things that I'd said about what a project gets and what it tells the rest of the world. And then the entry requirements into each one are specific. In some respects, they're a little bit what's written on paper. Some of it is maybe easier to achieve than you might expect. Some of it is about to be a very heated debate with respect to Linkerd's graduation, because Linkerd is submitting, I need to review it today actually before we meet. They're submitting to move from incubation to graduation. And one of the requirements is that literally what's written on paper is that the project has to have at least 2 contributors from different organizations that are employees of different organizations. And I think the spirit of the word contributor in that sense was meant to be maintainer. But that's a really weak requirement for a graduated project. Like for a while, only Kubernetes was the only graduated project for maybe a year or more. Then I think Prometheus was next. And Linkerd, they don't have, all of their maintainers are from one company. That hadn't always been the case, but over the life cycle of the project, some people have come and gone. Other people get hired by that same company. And so just as an example, that'll be a point of contention here shortly. But in broad strokes, does that give you a sense of like the fact that there are 3 stages and what and why?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, so there's other, yeah. So speaking of like yet another load balancer, or hey, there's a lot of projects that are fairly well overlap. That part of the spirit of part of the philosophy there is that the CNCF, like internal to the CNCF, we don't we're not kingmakers. meaning we don't say, oh, of these 4 projects that do the same thing, that's the one. That's the king right there. That's the one that's, oh, sorry, bumped my mic. That isn't the intention. And so the CNCF does welcome in competing projects, and naturally over time, one or more end up emerging as being successful. In our case, like with part of Meshery's focus is on multiple meshes. Meshery's true value is isn't on supporting multiple meshes. It's on helping you operate a service mesh with confidence and doing all kinds of fantastic things. A lot of things that we haven't talked about broadly in the community yet, but some roadmap that I think would blow your hair back. It's cream on the top that the things that we do will just work with any mesh. That's awesome. So the reason I'm mentioning multi-mesh and king making of projects is that I don't believe that the world will consolidate on just a single mesh. Yes, there will be one that enjoys much more popularity than the others, but in most markets, like right now, I'm on Mac OS. I'm using an iMac. I bet not all of you are using Mac OS or are on an iMac. That's because the world is made up of a diverse set of infrastructure. I bet none of you are using this silly mic that I just hit. Not because this is a great one, but just because the world is made up of all kinds. Why are we having to compile Nighthawk to different OSs? Because there's a bunch of OSs, because the world is made. Same thing with service meshes. It is and will continue to be a multi-mesh world. Like there's no question. And if anybody wants a deep explanation of that, come see me. It is the case that there will be 3 about that really enjoy much of the focus. One that takes more of the market share than all the rest combined. That's just like a general principle of economics, actually. Like in most markets, that's generally the way it is. If you, some of you might be able to spout off the top of your head what web browser. I'm using Safari right now. I bet none of you are using Safari at the moment. Maybe one of you. Anybody
I'm using Firefox.
Right? Okay. Some of you are using Chrome. Anybody want to admit to Internet Explorer?
I used it last night.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
I use Chrome.
I mean, not that, yeah. By the way, I wouldn't judge irrespective of whether you're maybe using Brave or like what it named Opera. But yeah, Anita, like to what you're saying, just between the 6 of us, there were 3 web browsers and the other 3 didn't say anything. And so like, that's just a great example of like over time, what used to be the world's most popular web browser? Internet Explorer. Why? Because most of us are dunces on the computer. And most of us had Windows, and that was just like the blue E. That was like the internet. That's, and over time stuff shifts, and the organizations behind some of the meshes are so heavily invested in them that, and they're pitted against each other as well, that they'll always be there. I mean, I shouldn't say they'll always be there. I mean, some will die off, but it wouldn't consolidate to a single thing. Kubernetes is a bit of an anomaly in this sense. There's a few reasons why Kubernetes is kind of the single standing container orchestrator. Technically, it's not. Like HashiCorp still makes Nomad. They still
And there's OpenShift, which I have never tried.
Yeah. OpenShift used to be on. Well, it used to like technically not even use Docker, and they had switched to rebasing on Kubernetes and OpenShift v2. And but it's an it's a Kubernetes distro. OpenShift. It's a Kubernetes fork. Red Hat forks all of the projects that they use for some good reasons. So they have a fork of Istio. Anyway, boy, you asked me a question. I can just blabber on for like 40 minutes.
Okay, another question. You can use Meshry to install service meshes, right?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah.
Wait, say it again. Like you can use Meshry to install different service meshes.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
Nice.
Yeah, Jubril, you probably aren't aware of this, and maybe the rest of you aren't either. Kind of an interesting thing, like a lot of people, I don't know, if I had a competing product to Meshry or product, there isn't a competing project, there's competing products. I'd probably have a smirk on my face about what these idiots are doing on Meshry with wasting all this time with compatibility with other meshes and then like having to focus a lot of time on beginner type flows of like installing them and doing simple lifecycle management of them. Like, yeah, I gotta say, yeah, it's been kind of boring, and it's been it's frustrating because we're not getting to the super interesting stuff just yet. We're about there. But part of what they're missing is that it will be a multi-mesh world. They're missing that, and it's a long-term strategy on that. They're also missing that it's going to take people another decade. People will still be coming to service meshes for another decade. Docker's been here 8 years. 100 people just came to Docker in the time that we've, well, not 100, but maybe 100 have come to the Docker for the first time since we started this call. Like, people are still coming to it for the first time. It's going to take people a long darn time to get to a service mesh. It takes a while. Long-term strategy works out a bit better. Why am I saying this? Oh yeah, because part of like being able to install them is like helping people evaluate them, helping people interoperate them. So helping people evaluate them, understand them, and then over time build confidence with them. And over time, the functionality of Meshry will just get more and more sophisticated. Is that another effort we have is the Service Mesh Patterns book. And in this book, well, there's a GitHub repo, Service Mesh Patterns. We're still kind of working on that. But Service Mesh Patterns, this book will, I have no idea when it'll come out. It takes a long time, but we're building out a bunch of patterns about how to do certain things in service meshes and what the pattern is and how to do it well. And the pattern is agnostic of the mesh. So it's not like it's a Linkerd cookbook or something like that.
So it's like a design pattern for service meshes.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh,
There's
nice.
it'll unless something weird happens, it'll be a 2-part book series. Like it'll be the first one on foundational 30 patterns, and the first one 30 patterns, and the advanced one. And Jubril, since this is going to be mesh agnostic, and we want the book to have a long shelf life, there'll be and you want to like reinforce every pattern with an example of like how to do this thing. Well, in order to do that, you kind of need like, I don't know, a multi-mesh manager to show you those things and do it in an agnostic way. The book just came out in early release. I don't think I really mentioned it broadly. There's the first couple of chapters are out on the O'Reilly platform now. Second chapter is nothing but Meshry. And then from there on out, Meshry will be mentioned in every single other chapter. What's our philosophy? That I'm giving this as an example of like part of the mentality toward long-term strategy on the projects being successful. It takes a lot of faith, and it takes a lot of, to one of our conversations before, it's nice to see Amia back. but tons and tons and tons of people come through, say hi, take off, never come back. We invest in them, try to help them, teach them stuff. They leave, they come back. And for some folks, like Amia is a great example. It's like, hey, life changes, and or just organically and very naturally, like focus shifts, focus come and go. And I wasn't really looking to comment on that as much as I was trying to say that keeping the faith long term, that like investing and writing is yet another book is worth it. Hopefully it is. Like, hopefully it really helps, as people will be coming to learn this stuff for a long time. A lot of times they turn to a book from O'Reilly or elsewhere to learn. And in this case, Meshery will be right in their face. So will service mesh performance, which we'll be talking about a fair bit in the book. And service mesh interface, SMI, which, you know, Meshery is the conformance tool for. So while the others are trying to sell product, we're taking a different approach and building community. So yeah, Amia, the first 2 chapters I think are out in early release on the O'Reilly platform. And then, like, I think technically the book was supposed to have been published by now, but I've got so much going on. It just takes a long time. So speaking of, I'll be inviting some people. I've opened up invitations in the past for people to participate in the book, and there's different ways to participate. But I'll say this: I'll reach out. I'll ask you if I think that you can be additive to it. But yeah, no, it's a lot of work. So any other questions? So Jubril, you know, based on our last conversations, and I encourage you to jump into Get Nighthawk. Like, it needs help, and actually, you might be able to help. Like, you know, of the things that you already know, and that you were kind of naturally already suggesting to be fixed. That last standing issue with Nighthawk, boom, there's a project for trying to build it differently. It's a good excuse to go make a mark on Get Nighthawk. As a matter of fact, today, part of what I'm going to do as soon as I get off is go nominate 3 maintainers on the Get Nighthawk project, and there's probably room for more. There's room for maintainers across a number of the projects that we have. If you guys are ever curious, like, for the most part, there's kind of 2 places you can look to see who's maintaining what. One of those is under Layer5io/community/members. Ooh, now that I say this, this might be out of date. So if you go to maintainers, I think we who do we just promote to? Navendu. Yeah, Navendu just got promoted to Meshery CTL maintainer. He needs to be, we should take a note. Actually, Anita, like, I don't know, Anita, if you either don't mind creating an issue to promote, I'll send you his name, Navendu, or just like taking on the issue yourself. You don't have to.
Sorry.
That's okay. I know. I did. What did you say? I missed.
No, there was background noise. That's what I was saying.
Oh, okay. You know what? I misspelled his name. It doesn't have the A on the last bit. But yeah. We need to get him promoted to a maintainer. or he is. We need to reflect that. That's one way to look at where the maintainers are. Another way to look at where the maintainer or who's maintaining what is, I'm curious, is in GitHub. I'm curious for each of you, if you go to the Layer5 org and you were to click on, I don't know if you'll also, yeah, I think you should see teams. You might not see all of the teams, but you should see some of them. Like there's a number of maintainers teams, and you can see some of the different people for the different areas that they maintain. So the maintainership stuff, like we've, I think actually as Anita and Ruth and others potentially work on a community handbook, there's a very purposeful journey that we try to take contributors on, and just sort of growing in recognition and growing in scope of responsibility as they go. We have, it's actually, there's a flow chart for like, it's pretty specific. I've been falling down on it a lot because we don't have a dedicated community manager. We have about 25 like, what do you call them? Ordained community managers, none of which, I don't fault anyone for it, but none of which other than a couple of them will actually do some of the tasks. Anyway, point is, part of that isn't well defined is like, what do you have to do to ultimately achieve becoming a maintainer? And what does it mean to sustain that role, like to wear that hat? The unsatisfying answer, but it's very simple and true, is like, how do you get added to the GitHub to this? How do you get invited to this team? How do you get your picture on the, if you wanted a community profile, how do you get one of those? If you wanted to have the Twitter account follow you or retweet some of your stuff, like how do you get sent a book or like any of that? There's a bunch of rewards that are kind of latent in there. How do you get an internship either with Layer5 or through, like there's open positions in the service mesh working group that I created. We need a tech lead there. We need a tech lead in the SIG network. How do any of those things get accomplished? Well, you just, you do them. You start maintaining, and then it's not like then you just get acknowledged for doing those things. It's not like you get promoted into the roles like, oh, hey, we think this person's going to do that thing and they look like a good, let's promote them and then hope that happens. Like, no, hey, you just do it. And then you're recognized and then you're uplifted and supported. So, by the way, for those who haven't been in industry in your career for a long time, that's generally how it works in in organizations as well, corporations, that like if you want that promotion to a manager or something, is like, how do you get it? And this is weird when I say it, but you start doing the role. You start managing people. It's like, well, how could you possibly start managing people if you're not, organizationally positioned to do such a thing if they don't report to you? I don't know. Come get an internship here and I'll tell you how. It's going to take a while. Anyway, man, I've droned on. Any other questions for today?
Oh yeah, I was asking the other day, the diagrams for adapters.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I find that a bit confusing.
Yeah. Let's take a peek. So, oops. Oh wow, I forgot we were doing some draft work on. This is kind of ugly. Yeah. So, okay, so Meshery's architecture includes any number of adapters. Without me droning on and saying things that maybe you already are familiar with, Jubril, do you want to try to explain it to me, and then I'll characterize it as you go?
Okay, I could try. Let's see.
And or let me. I'll kickstart you with well with the notion that each of the service meshes themselves, so a lot of them have overlapping functionality. Like a lot of them will allow you to configure a rate limit, like so that a service doesn't get overwhelmed with a bunch of requests. So you can, it's kind of a common feature. But not all the service meshes, like all these logos, like they have different, you know, they're different, right? They have some of the same overlapping capabilities, but not all the same. And they try to be different, right? They try to differentiate and do some interesting things. And to interface with and expose their differentiation, there's different approaches to interfacing with them. One approach was something like service mesh interface. Service mesh interface is kind of like Terraform. Like Terraform is to multiple clouds. SMI is to different service meshes, meaning it just defines a lowest common denominator specification, set of specifications for interfacing with service meshes. That was confusing what I just said, probably. Actually, this is maybe the best way of trying to explain mesh-tree adapters. I would say mesh-tree adapter is, that analogy to Terraform is very, makes a lot of sense. If mesh-tree server is Terraform, and in Terraform, you can load up any number of providers because maybe you're doing things on AWS or on Azure. So you can use different specific providers to interface with different technologies. That's mostly what these adapters are. So
okay, that makes sense, actually. Yeah.
So one for each mesh. Now, there's a lot of overlap, and we've tried to, here recently, one of the maintainers, Michael Gefeller, had written a blog post like fairly recently talking about how we've tried to improve the developer experience of managing and sustaining 10 different adapters. Like, gosh, you have to do these things, all this stuff 10 times over. How do we be intelligent about this? And so that's what this talks about. Yeah. But Jubril, we've got about another minute. What else on this? Like,
Actually, I think that's all now. Like, I get how this works. So, in my mind, mesh-tree makes calls to the adapters as the user interacts with through the UI or the command line. So, mesh-tree server would make calls to the adapters and get information from there. And I'm not sure what the operator does. Okay, is this to keep it in sync with the cluster? I think you mentioned this a while back.
Yep, that's exactly right.
Yeah, so I guess that's all. I got thrown off when I saw this this platform on the right here. So.
Oh, yeah.
So
yeah, this is to try to acknowledge that, like, hey, not everything runs in Kubernetes. That maybe you've got services running in VMs, and that as a project, like while we're leaning into Kubernetes first, we're trying to have an architecture that is complementary to non-containerized services, things outside of Kubernetes.
or like console.
Yeah, exactly. See, that's actually one of the reasons why there will be multiple meshes. It's like Linkerd does a super fantastic job of being lightweight and Kubernetes native and Kubernetes only. great. If it's all in Kubernetes, great. If it's not, maybe this is the one for you, or this one, or this one, or this one, or this one. Like some of the other ones do things outside of Kubernetes. Not this one, not this one, and not this one. At least not yet. They want to, and yeah, I'll tell you a story about that later. But yeah. Anything else for today? As a matter of fact, actually, I gotta go. I shouldn't ask that. Jubril, great questions, man. Thanks for making it an interesting hour for me.
Thank you for the time.
It's nice to have Asuko and Anita and Adina. See you guys tomorrow for the community call, hopefully.
Okay, sir.
Okay.
Bye.
All right. Bye, all. See ya.
Okay.
Bye,
Take
Anita.
care. Bye.
Bye.